guys? This is Tired Goth, and you are watching threatintel 102. It's my new series where I talk about some of the things that are in my new book, Attacks Actually. You can check that out. You can pre-order it on the Patreon. I'll drop the links in the description below. But this is if I'm not mistaken, it's the third episode in the series that discusses threat intelligence with intangible threat models, I guess you could say, right? Things that have everything to do with what is in the unseen, what is unknown, and how it impacts. I would like to begin by saying this is an 18 plus for entertainment purposes discussion. You are to entertain it at will. While these things were very real to me when I survived them, when I went through them, they are for your entertainment, meaning you are to intellectually conceptualize what is here for your own discernment purposes. So your discernment is key here, okay? But today's episode is going to be about something called psychic shielding. It's another facet of intuitive reasoning and how to protect oneself. But it also gets into the somewhat nitty-gritty details of how you actually defend yourself against attacks that you can't see. A lot of people would call this shadow boxing, or something that was almost preemptively or proactively preparing for an attack. Especially if you don't know who your attacker is, there is a lot left to be desired in the case of whatever it is that you would be preparing for, be it a physical attack, an intellectual attack, an attack on your emotions, or a creative attack where someone forges something into a truth or a lie or anything, right? Here, we're going to be discussing some of the riskier, if that didn't capture properly, sides of defense of oneself, defense of one's motives, the whole concept of no face, no case kind of thing, but not so literally. We're going to delve into some methods that I personally discovered and probably had been employed by, intelligence agencies prior to me even knowing they existed. Possibly. May have invented a few of my own, actually, but we're going to talk about what you actually have to do with your personality in order to fulfill your highest resonance of defense against frequency attacks, motivations that operate against your own well-meaning operations and intentions, and other things that tie in here. So let's begin. This is going to be a little intense, so just sit and listen. So I'd like to begin with a story. I noticed that a social media situation that I had stumbled into in the hopes of making friends when I was in a really desperate place left me open to some of my more vulnerable details, maybe not having the most protection that I thought I needed, that I realized I needed. There was a lot there that I was not understanding about how people were talking to one another, what they were doing, to be able to get more information to talk about me to each other on social media and so on and so forth. I realized that I actually became the target of a very quiet obsession at some point, and a lot of this obsession was security tools and or psychic tools, or both, having the ability to pry into my personal life and my personal goings on without me knowing anything, right? So I took that with not so much a grain of salt, but a lot of digested rage. Like anyone else probably would have. I didn't necessarily take the rage out on myself, but I didn't necessarily cope with it very well emotionally. I cried a lot. I felt myself feeling hopeless a lot. And, I realized that these types of influences were actually not always within my control, because there were people benefiting off of the fact that I was debilitated by my emotions. And it took me a very long time to realize, oh wow, that's something that could benefit people because I would be down for the count. It took me actually about 2 to 4 years to realize that that could have been a strategy against me, and I never had any idea. So what did I do about it? I did what they probably thought was the unthinkable. I started getting out of bed, walking around, and researching, right? I realized upon my research that I had been prone and prey of death magic, which is something we'll discuss in probably another episode, but to put it succinctly, death magic is basically someone or a group of people, which is like, not just 2 or 3 or 4 people, but maybe 17 to 30 people all chanting over the hopes of your dead body to gain them success in a sacrifice ritual. Imagine 17 to 30 people standing in front of you doing nothing, and you already have an idea of what it would be like for all of them to be so upset with your existence that they would wish death upon you, right? That is the type of information that we're talking about here, the intention measured here. Another thing is I noticed that there was frequent bodily presence around me. I was never really alone despite wanting to be. So whenever I would desire to be alone, I noticed there were always people walking around near a room or an area where I was. There were always people passing back and forth through an egress. And there was always this thing, right? There was always this motivation for someone to protect the fact that there was an egress that could not be blocked in order for this to continue happening. I found this out by discussing this with the police for my own safety and getting denied. Okay, so that, mind you, leads into the next thing, gang stalking. Many people that you have never met making themselves known to you as if you're supposed to know who they are. And for those of you who are like, well, what do you mean supposed to know? You know the vibe. You know the vibe when someone shows up like, weren't you expecting me to show up? Where the natural response is, actually, no, who the hell are you? Why are you here? Who are you people? Right? This is how you know, for the utmost ease of discernment, which is actually very easy in this case, that you're being targeted. Because your body is screaming at you, saying, why are these people near you? Who are these people? Why are they near you all the time? Okay? These are spiritual attacks. These are attacks used to force your energy into a low frequency of fear. You know what happens when you're afraid? You actually experience mild paralysis. You enter a fight or flight mode. You enter a mode that you're not meant to be existing in for more than maybe 40 minutes at a time, with which you only save yourself or another person, depending on the rescue situation. Okay? What is so convoluted about the tactics used to protect people who are being targeted is that they don't have any protection, actually, except what it is that their body is telling them. And for there to be a succinct or concise list of what it is that's actually happening to them as this is going on, this would technically need to be petitioned to authorities who already know this information, who already know that this is possible, who are already denying it so it can continue to go on, because there are, let's face it, secret factions and belief systems present within authority that are contra to the belief of the whole of the authority. Now that I've completely crumbled apart how most institutions get away with hurting people under the jurisdiction of the law, and by protecting themselves with the law flipped sort of sideways to benefit them, we're going to talk about another part of this excellent discussion. What a person may be driven to do or compelled to do to protect themselves from this. Okay, so the art of war states that you have to know your territory. Now, going back to the social media situation that I'm trying to bring into this conversation, it depends always on territory when you are assessing your threats. The reason being that if you don't know what territory you are in, who you are around, what their belief systems are, what their practices are, what their interests are, you leave yourself open to be gravely harmed by the mysteries there. Now, what do you mean by gravely harmed? Tired goth, right? Yes, okay. What we mean here when we are talking about grave harm is something that completely and fully, wholly contradicts your sense of peace, be it bodily, physically, right? Bodily and physically. So bodily is also the sensory connection you have with the universe and other people. Physically is what is physically happening to your vessel. Are you being hit? Are you being targeted by objects, right? Are you being threatened with a weapon, right? Things like this. Are you being harmed with a weapon specifically? The threat is actually more intellectual and emotional, right? And then, of course, we have the spiritual side of this, where the spirit of what is happening is warped to appear fine when it is actually reversed and with full malicious intention. You see the spiritual side of these attacks a lot in movies involving crime and drama, which I don't really watch, but everybody's seen Goodfellas. Everybody's seen, A Bronx Tale. Everybody's seen Scarface. It's the air of doing what you want underneath what it looks like, right? The covering of the truth is what we're talking about here. So spiritually speaking, when you are involved in a spiritual war that involves all of these other facets where your body could be harmed, your intellect could be harmed through brain damage, through trauma, anything. Your emotions could thus be harmed because you are processing so much trauma at once that you burn out, right? All of these things play into one another to debilitate, literally cripple a person from their own cognizance first, from their own emotional capability first, maybe second. Depends on how they choose to play, right? And this is a game to them. This is a game to these people who dabble in this kind of thing. This is not something that is actually fun or a game. But they play chess. And we're going to get into one of the ways they play chess. Multi-platform social media interactions, otherwise known as 3D or 8D chess, is exactly how. A person will open one account here on one social media platform, unbeknownst to anyone, after having opened 2 or 3 others here, or vice versa. They might open the other 2 first, and then hone in on their one account. But usually it's one account central to all the other chess identities here. Now, when I say chess identities, I'm talking about where they plot, where their honesty is versus where their actions to lure, scam, betray, and deceive and hide people are. So it's sort of like one account is home base for the attackers. They all know each other. They all operate under secret handles. They all operate with appearances that only they would recognize. And then the other accounts are their sock puppet accounts. They won't call it a sock puppet account because they'll be like, oh, I'm just protecting my privacy, which is fine. Protect your privacy. But what did you do with your privacy? What was your intention for your privacy? This is where we start the real chat, okay? So this particular mode of operation is widely used to deceive others who are expecting genuine interactions. They could be catfish accounts, they could be peddling accounts, they could be, and when I say peddling, I mean like they might be selling things literally for money under these accounts and then like reporting back on the results elsewhere. Typical business tactics actually, except it's a matter of what they're selling. For example, if a person owns a website and says, hey, check out my legitimate Twitter or Facebook page to talk. Okay, just keep that in mind. But if, or X, whatever it's called, I haven't been on Twitter since I was a young person. So, yeah, but this is where they would start this kind of thing, right? And be like, oh, and it points back to this business that I run where I make like, body products or run a blog or something, or whatever the case is, right? These people use Twitter to say, guys, I'm reporting back about all the other stuff that's been happening on that page over there, but I can't directly reference it, so I'm just gonna like chat in memes over here. And everyone else is like, okay, okay. And then the other interactions on that page where they're peddling things involve revenge porn, drugs, illicit material that they shouldn't possess, like live footage of someone's webcam that they don't even know is in their house. Yeah, that kind of thing, right? Enforced suicide missions, suicide shows. I'm sure you've heard about those in red rooms, right? Or around people who have discussed red rooms and other material I'm not comfortable discussing necessarily, but abusive material involving sexual abuse, emotional abuse, and any other type of abuse involving anyone of any age. We'll just leave it vague for now. The issues with this is that while it's very clever to operate this way, it is not so fun to be on the receiving end of trying to figure out how this is all being done when you don't have any idea of where it started. Kind of like I did. I didn't, rather. So, guess what I did? I did what they did. I lied. I lied. I lied my butt off. I was very sweet, very honest, and very genuine, and then realized going into these circles, there would have to be a point where I switched up to agree with them. Because there was something in my spirit that was not settled with what it is that they were doing, and I couldn't figure out what it was. So what did I do? Instead of trying to beat them, I joined them to beat them. Okay? This is not something I'm necessarily recommending to everyone as a tactic, but if you are mentally and emotionally prepared to go against your mind, as it were, that is exactly how to deflect these types of attacks. I'll give you examples. If someone triggers you emotionally, you have to take your feelings and pull them all the way back and even eat them. Act like you enjoy what is happening. They are going to be so upset if you master this, because while it is damaging to do this long term, I don't actually recommend that anyone does this specifically until they understand the repercussions, like the physical illnesses that you get from stress responses that your body is naturally having to things it's naturally upset with, right? But this is something that is effective. When you go into a situation with a mask on, specifically to let people unravel themselves for you, it is a type of kung fu. It is mental kung fu. You have to get into the mind of the person that is targeting you by allowing them to target you, meaning you need to eat attacks. You need to sit there and act like these attacks on your spirit are your food until it brings you enlightenment about why they are doing things a certain way, what their mode is, what their intention is. And then once that starts to come together after pattern-based reasoning, you get the information you need to keep building with it. Now, here's the thing. What you're not going to be prepared for in the case that you decide to do something like this is the reaction that you are going to have to your own emotions after you've let them build up. So meditation and also assessment of what to hold on to in the way of what you received needs to be completely done and then flushed from you. You need to sit with yourself and realize where the core of your ethic, your basis, and your motivations all are in order to fortify yourself for what it is that you are doing and engaging with. I know that that sounds insane. In a sense, it is, because you are quite literally putting yourself in a position where you, as a person, are facing your attacker with their own face. And a lot of them won't actually pick up on it. One such perfect example was a person that I picked up trying to get me to sell them pictures of myself pretending to be a baby for them. And they didn't ask for it that way, but they asked for me to present myself with a video where my bottom half of my body was uncovered and I was petitioning them to be a paternal figure. A paternal figure for me. Now, I was disgusted by this. But do you know what I did? I went along with it. I played along. I did a lot of things that I would not normally do at all, just to feed the bit. I was terrifying to myself, probably to him. I feel like he could sense that something was wrong, but like didn't really care because I was really good looking. And so I went along with it, just to see what he really wanted. And this is where it got very messy for him, because he started trying to bait me with money, saying he was going to send me money for what I was doing. But if he had intentions of doing this, if he really wanted to, he would have at least sent something based on what I did to see what his intentions were. And he didn't. And that's how I knew that I was being exploited. So I said, oh, okay. So I might have sent him a little something. But I figured out his whole game, right? So tactically speaking, I lent a finger and got his whole arm. The end of that discussion came to a point of me collecting all of the information that he gave to me, trying to bond with me to see when I would be available to talk with him more about all of his sick fantasies about infantilizing me and pretending that he was possibly assaulting a minor because I looked so young. That I took his information and reported him to the UK police for being a threat to minors, which is exactly what he was. He was on a website where he, quite literally, as a 28-year-old man, was trying to interact with people who appeared to be much younger than him, and their excuse was, oh, there's a teacher here, and all of his students followed him over here. Now we get to the good part. Who are we really around in this territory, right? This is the part where we're going to dive in. If you don't know who you're around, that counts as a territory, and that counts as something you need to use to defend yourself. You wait, you listen, you chat about superfluous things. Now, I'm not going to burn methods here because they do work.